Hello, everyone. Welcome to this masterclass where we talk about how women become magnetic in love, powerful in leadership, and deeply respected in every room that they enter. So, most women are taught that there's one correct way to be feminine, right? Be nurturing, be soft, be agreeable. Um, but that is not real feminine power. Real feminine power is way more complex than that. There is a whole spectrum. I come from an Indian lineage, so I have grown up with the fact that the goddess exists in all forms of her glory, from some that are not even discovered yet. Like, that's how wide and far the whole goddess spectrum goes. And today I am going to be talking about six. Um, I've been able to condense them into six, and these six are also common in the Western world. And, people speak about the spectrum of goddess energies in many different ways. But what's important is to understand that no woman is stuck or is, just one type, one archetype, because the nature of a woman or anyone that identifies with the feminine is that she moves through different archetypal energies depending on the season of her life. So sometimes she is playful and receptive, sometimes she's fierce and untamed, sometimes she nurtures and builds family or community, sometimes she observes life or is spiritual and connected to the unseen, and sometimes she just has to step into her power and lead with authority and command attention. So when a woman understands this spectrum, she becomes magnetic. And magnetism is something that is very natural to a woman. So, the male species, the masculine, of course, we are all a yin yang. We all carry masculine and feminine, and men also carry the feminine as well. But today we're just focusing on these archetypes, and magnetism is very natural for a woman because when she is in her feminine power, when she really does embody these archetypes and she knows when to use these archetypes in her life. I'm literally going to be breaking down when to activate each archetype. You will switch on a magnetism that does not require you to compete with a man or to use like action and forced effort to get things in your life. Because if we look at the history of just the evolution of a woman, there has been many seasons, right? There's been times where a woman could not work or go out of the house, but she was still able to bring in prosperity and bring in the unseen for her family. And unfortunately, she was not rewarded for this because the war on the feminine at that time was not to be rewarded for anything that is not, A plus B equals C or 1 plus 2 equals 3. So there is an unseen force that women have, and it relies on their magnetism. And the title of this is the six feminine archetypes that make a woman irresistible, and it seems superficial on the surface, but genuinely it transcends superficiality because we're now crossing into a realm where we can move mountains by understanding that our power can be action orientated. It's not to say that it's not to use action, but there's also an unseen realm that everyone on the planet is going to be tapping into more and more, and we already are, and even men will be using this power as well, right? And they already do. The power of mastering the inner self, knowing how to act at what point, what to be, when to remove yourself, when to move forward, all of these kind of things. And that is what is so important about this masterclass. And I also want to say that when you become trapped in an expression, because I've worked with many clients that stay in one archetype without realizing it, that also blocks you from being able to move through your life. So if you found yourself asking questions like in a relationship, why did he lose interest in me and become deeply devoted to someone else? Or why do I attract men who admire me but don't pursue me seriously? Or why do some women seem to effortlessly inspire devotion while others feel like they're constantly proving their worth? And in a work setting, it might be, why do I feel powerful and respected in my work, but relationships feel confusing or unbalanced? In family, it could be, why do I feel like I'm too much for my family and not enough for others? Right? Or just many different things. And I want you to get really in touch with what your question is today, right? There has been a question in your life that you haven't been able to figure out. It could be, why have I not manifested love? Why am I not able to bring money through? Why do I have to work so hard and do so much for the things that I have, whereas other people get it easily? Or why am I not able to move forward in my life? Whatever it is, get in touch with your questions, because we need a question to then find the answer, right? We need to find the clarity. Also, at different points of your life, you might have felt differently. Maybe in your 20s, you felt completely admired and able to move through life freely, but you weren't able to stabilize anything in your life. And then maybe in your 30s, 40s, you were able to stabilize, but then you lost touch with that freedom to move. Maybe in your 50s and 60s, you were too focused on the mother archetype, and now you're not able to see beyond that. Like when your children, hopefully your children leave home before you're 60, but you know what I'm saying, right? So at different points, we actually do activate these archetypes, get stuck in these archetypes, not know how to move out of them, not know which one we're supposed to go to next. That's why this masterclass is so powerful. So other times you might feel invisible, misunderstood, or constantly giving more than you receive. And many women assume that there's something wrong with them, and they're not understanding that there's a natural transition through a woman's life where she moves through different energies and archetypal expressions, and each archetype carries its own magnetism. That's we're going to be talking about the magnetism of each one, what kind of partners each archetype attracts, opportunities, dynamics. When you start understanding these archetypes, many of the confusing patterns in love, relationships, and identity begin to make sense. You start connecting the dots as to why someone that you deeply loved chose to marry somebody else, or why someone you got divorced to settled down with the next woman and gave everything to them, or why someone is just so good at sales and you're not. And you actually realize that it's actually nothing to do with you and more about them and what they were attracted to, and how your qualities are now moving you into the next stage of your life, and other people will be attracted to you, right? So, but also how to switch on the attraction, switch not in a manipulative way, not in a superficial way. That is not, if you know my work, that is not what I'm about. In fact, I've created this whole event called the Goddess Frequency to challenge the misconceptions of femininity, because the feminine has been reduced to something that I find quite offensive, right? So now it's about stepping back into the power. So we're going to talk about what shapes attraction, influence, identity, going to start moving away from asking what is wrong with me, and actually asking, so this question is important, so you might want to write it down, which archetype is alive in me right now and which one is waiting to emerge. So let's do a diagnostic, right? Before exploring the archetypes, ask yourselves 3 more questions. Which archetype do you operate from most in a relationship? Which archetype shows up most strongly in your work and leadership? And which archetype have you suppressed or lost connection with? So as I go through this, you might recognize, okay, this is who I am in a relationship, or this is what I am like in work, or this one I don't identify with at all. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist within you, because all of them exist within us. It means you've lost touch in how to activate and bring that archetype forward. Okay? I'm also going to be talking about ancient stories as well, because myths activate something ancient within us. It's a remembering. So that is also going to be happening. So let's go for it. The 6 feminine spectrum archetypes are the maiden, slash the princess. Okay, now this is, I've used Western language for this. Obviously, in Eastern cultures, there's many goddesses that represent this archetype. The second one is the wild woman and the rebel. The third one is the matriarch and mother. The fourth one is wise woman and crone. The sixth one is priestess, and the fifth one is priestess, and the sixth one is queen. Each archetype contains a magnetic quality, a love dynamic, so who they attract, who is naturally drawn to them, who is not drawn to them, who's actually repelled by them, the shadow expression of this archetype, the core wound of this archetype, and when in your life this archetype is needed. So this is what we're going to be doing for each archetype. So let's start with the maiden. And before that, please do remember that the power of feminine mastery is not choosing one archetype and mastering it. It's about moving fluidly between them. So the maiden and the princess. The maiden represents innocence, openness, possibility. I want you to think about yourself when you were well, people's childhood can be loaded, so I don't want to say think about yourself in childhood. But this represents someone who had a really great, free, early life, right? So she carries the energy of new beginnings. She believes that life is still unfolding and anything is possible. And people are drawn to her because she reminds them of hope and freshness. So her magnetic qualities are playful, receptive, curious, visionary, open-hearted, and optimistic. And the love dynamic, the person that this archetype just attracts men who really want to protect, guide, or build something meaningful. Okay, so they are very attracted to this open, playful, curious kind of energy. They want to be reminded of their youth and the new possibilities and the potentials that come with that. So it might be somebody that's not able, it might, I want you to think about someone, maybe they're in finance or corporate. Not everyone in finance and corporate is like this, but I have met a lot of men who they have gone so high up in the ladder that they have lost touch with what it means to be playful, open, curious. They're in such a grind. They're in the hustle. So when they meet the princess and the maiden, they feel very activated because she reminds them of new possibilities and potential. Now, this can actually explain why people say sometimes that older men go for younger women. I personally believe that it's because it's not necessarily that they want younger women. It's that they are trying to connect with a part of themselves that is youthful, wants new possibilities and potential. Now, this activates a masculine protector energy, but I want to give a disclaimer here, right? Because this doesn't, and I'm going to talk about who actually repels this, who's kind of doesn't want to start a life with a maiden and princess type. Now, the masculine protector energy will step into this kind of, dynamic, and they will want to build something meaningful, protect and guide, but the real transaction here, because relationships, unfortunately, in the human experience is transactional until we evolve this. But the real transaction here is that they are protecting and guiding and, building because they want to be in touch with this playful, receptive, visionary, open-hearted, optimistic spirit. Okay. Now, if a man who genuinely wants, he wants to have romance and he wants to step into his creative energy and his visionary energy. He wants to renew his experience of how he sees the world instead of necessarily, building some legacy at that moment. Then he will be drawn to the maiden and the princess. But someone who's not drawn to her is a man who is highly strategic, right? So there might be someone in the season of their life that they are building something. They're very serious about their life mission. And they might choose to, want to be with someone that has equal power dynamics. They might want to be in a power couple, right? They know how their life is going once they have a real vision of how their life is going to be. And they actually don't want to be spontaneous at this time in their life. They're actually looking for more of a queen energy. They want to build a legacy, they want to build a family, they know exactly what they want to go towards. This kind of man is not going to be drawn to the princess and maiden at this point in his life because he will more experience her as like a daughter or a child, and that is not going to be attractive to him. So do you see that there are men who would be attracted to this, and there are also men that are not attracted to this? So when I meet women that say, maybe they've are questioning why their partner didn't stay with them or went with somebody else, it's not necessarily because anything to do with you. Now, there's going to be another man that's very magnetized your qualities. So if you're somebody who is a queen archetype, there will be a man that is looking for that. But then there's also another man that is not looking for that because he is looking for something different in his life. He wants to connect to the maiden and the princess. So there is a season for this. The truth is, if you really find your divine counterparts, and you as two souls have decided to go through this life together, you will flow through the archetypes and he will flow through the archetypes and you will continuously find each other again. If not, you will, both people are flowing through their archetypes and they find whoever they're supposed to find. Now, the shadow expression of the princess is she can be overly dependent. The shadow expression is when the princess, there's a power and there's a light, but there's also, if she doesn't develop her gifts, she can get stuck. If you get stuck in this archetype, then you can be overly dependent. You might be avoiding responsibility. You might be very naive about the world, right? You're stuck in the inner child and the little girl, and there is an emotional immaturity there. Best believe I have met people in their 60s who are stuck in maiden princess, and they feel that life is very unfair to them, and all of these, and someone has to rescue them, and someone has to save them. This is not attractive. Means that you are not able to move through the archetypes, and you've frozen in, the little girl or the inner child throughout your whole life. And this is why introspection, mindfulness, the inner work really allows you to not be stuck in a phase of your life. The core wound of the princess maiden is people pleasing, right? So deep inside, she is genuinely, if she's experiencing the shadow qualities, she's looking for a parental figure. She also does not understand how to be self-sufficient in life. And she's trapped in that identity. And this leads to people pleasing because now she thinks I have to give people what they want to first be able to be self-sufficient and also to just be able to survive. So actually the root chakra, even though her heart's open and, her mind is open, it's like the root is unstable because at this point in your life, when you're in your true maiden phase, which is early 20s, and of course you can step back into it at any time, which I'm going to be talking about. But typically the journey is, you probably don't, you're just experiencing life. You haven't really like rooted yourself into wealth, most people, right? So it's only when you evolve from that you start understanding how to be self-sufficient. So, like I said, this archetype can be activated in many different areas of your life and many different times, even if you're 90, okay? Because this is a energy. Now, the Princess Maiden energy, when we use it correctly, when we bring this energy back, it is going to revitalize us. It is going to let us look at the world with new eyes. Through that curiosity. It's almost like the Fool card in tarot, if any of you know that symbol. The Fool card is someone who just trusts life. And this archetype is great to activate during beginnings. new relationships, creative ideas, life transitions, if you actually notice that the maiden archetype naturally comes back when you are starting a new relationship or when you have got a new creative idea or when you are going through a life transition or when there is a beginning of some sort, it's like that, that newness. And you also, if you're someone that is very stuck in your day to day. You know how I was explaining about the guy who's stuck into his routine and how he's so attracted to the princess. If you are someone that's really stuck into your routine and your way of life and you feel frozen and you just can't connect with the magic of life, then yes, you need the maiden and princess. You need to magnetize her to come into your world again because you will definitely need to bring this energy to lead you to new relationships, creative ideas, life transitions. Now, what is the erotic essence, the magnetism? What's the raw attraction of the maiden princess? It is literally the youthful wonder, emotional lightness, freshness, playfulness, and openness to experience, innocence, and curiosity, the excitement of discovery. There's also another thing, which is very attractive, is the link to childhood. A lot of people lose their inner child. In the sense they might be stuck in their inner child, they might be stuck in their wounding, but they've lost sense of that playfulness, that emotional lightness. And people who are very attracted, even sexually attracted to the maiden princess, is because she is so free. So even if we're speaking about in intimacy, she is just so free, open to new experiences, open to experimentation, open to just experiencing, right? Without being too heavy. Everything is new, everything is fresh, everything's fun, everything's playful. So I want to talk about one of my clients, right? So she was extremely guarded in her relationship. She realized she had shut down her maiden energy after painful rejection in her early 20s. So because she stepped into maiden, she had a series of very unfortunate events, which then made her feel that she cannot ever be this energy again because it led her to horrible events. So then going on into her life, she became very much a control freak, right? If we're going to be honest. And she wasn't able to let people in her life or anything in her life really unless she felt really in control of it. And it's only after we started working together and really resolved all of the stuff around why she shut out the maiden and the princess archetype and how, because this is actually the energy she really needed again in this life because she had stepped too much into control. And when we did that and we were able to integrate that feminine archetype back into her life, so much shifted, right? Because this is the thing that she shut out. And so much shifted in the way she approached life, her dating life, the way she approached even her career, how she was able to come up with new ideas, how she was able to really connect to her team from like a heartfelt place. So much, so much came through. And even with her dating, how she was able to just be free and explorative in her life, right? So that is all coming from just reclaiming the energy of the maiden. Now we're going to go on to the second archetype, which is the wild woman and the rebel. Now, the wild woman represents freedom, instinct, and authenticity. So she is a part of a woman that refuses to live inside rules that suffocate her spirit, and she rather would listen to her instincts rather than social expectations. Now, the wild woman, the rebel, she's courageous. She's very authentic. She's passionate. She's uninhibited with her creative expression, meaning she's not thinking, I'm going to create something that people like. This is like just throwing paint on the, canvas and knowing that that art is not what is given to other people and how it's like what's coming through from her. And she's very truthful, she's very independent, she can be an anarchist, she can be rebellious. And this archetype attracts men who really value courage and honesty. It actually awakens the masculine adventurer or explorer. So if a man really wants, a woman that speaks her mind and is absolutely uninhibited, he is going to be drawn to to the wild woman. And in him, she awakens his ability to explore and be in touch with a rawness inside of him. She also attracts men who are also raw. They're also in the wild man phase. And it's not just men. When I'm talking about attraction, it can be men, women, even in sales calls, even in friendships, even in whatever, family. Um, this is an energy that it activates something truly free, the dancing wildly under the moon, the painting freely, the singing. Like I definitely have had this wild woman recently activated, and it's led me, if a lot of you know my work, I am also a singer, and I channel music on the spot without rehearsing anything. And that has taken me a massive journey, taken me on a massive journey, and it has been a massive journey to get to. And it was really the wild woman, the deconstructing of the idea, because before my idea was that I have to be very perfect and hit every note, and if I didn't, I was failing. And it was the wild woman that really came in and just destroyed all of that and was like, and now I sing for what comes through and for myself and for whoever understands it. And it's not for everyone, and that's completely fine. And that is exactly what the wild woman is. She is a visionary, an artist, and she can be an entrepreneur. She can be someone who really goes against the grain and she has edge. And men who are visionaries are very drawn to her because she's on the edge. She's on the edge of creative thinking. She completely thinks out of the box. Artists are drawn to her because being around the wild woman gets people in touch with something that they've never encountered before. Entrepreneurs are drawn to her as well because they want their entrepreneurs naturally think of new ways of doing things. So they're being around the wild woman awakens parts of the brain that literally haven't been activated. And partners who admire women who go against the grain and have edge will be attracted to her. Now, what is the shadow expression of the wild woman? So what do we not want to really, stay too long in the wild woman? Because sometimes we can dip into the shadow and that's completely fine, but we don't really stay there. Okay, because staying there means we get stuck. So rebellion without purpose. So this is like your teenage years, right? When you just rebel because you're trying to find out the boundaries. You're trying to find how far you can push buttons. And then you're just rebellious, right? Because you're starting to encounter choice and encounter that you can act how you want and you don't really believe in everything that the world tells you or your parents tell you or your teachers tell you. But often in teenage, there's rebellion without purpose. There's not any purpose. Like if you're rebelling against war or rebelling against animal cruelty or rebelling against pollution to the earth or rebelling against cruelty to children or women, then there's a purpose. But if it's just rebellion, you're just on the fringe of society and nobody really knows why, then you're literally wasting the wild woman energy and you've become stuck. Also, it causes isolation from community. The wild woman is really supposed to bring this energy back into earth. She's not meant to be out of society. There's a time she goes out of society to find her craft, but she eventually brings it back in. So if you feel too isolated from the communities and you feel distrust of society in general, we can feel distrustful of society, but we are still in a society. We are still here. We are still in communication with people. And we need to bring the medicine back. We can't just reject and distrust and isolate because then what is the point? Unless you are going on a complete becoming like a monk and you have renounced, you just don't want anything to do with life in general, then that's different. But if you want to be part of life, the destructive independence is not actually giving anything to anyone. So you can get stuck in the shadow because of a feeling of injustice that you're feeling. The wild woman really does feel her core wound is she could feel that her voice or power has been suppressed. And the shadow of this is she feels that she needs to be louder. So an overactive throat chakra, like just constantly speaking or shouting or whatever, like really trying to get your message across because you feel that your voice hasn't been heard or you feel rejected from society, is really showing that you're never moving beyond the wild woman due to not knowing, she just doesn't know where she belongs. And this is not really what we want. We want to create absolute innovation. We want to bring through things that have never come through before. In relationships, we want to be completely free and uninhibited in ourselves and bring that back into a relationship, teach others how to do it. So that is the real medicine of the wild woman. And the wild woman is needed when something in your life is limiting your freedom, when you're stuck in a box somehow, right? Maybe you're living in really unhealthy relationships or you're breaking restrictive career paths. So an unhealthy relationship, maybe you just feel that the way your family is run is just not for you. Okay? And instead of accepting it, because the mother archetype will have to accept and she will have to work the system from within because she's in a different time, right? That the queen will also, she can't just abandon her kingdom. But the wild woman can say, actually, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to go find another tribe. Or if someone is a very restrictive career path, she can say, I'm not doing it anymore. Or if there's a truth that everybody's avoiding, she can speak it. Now, if we think about feminism, it was the wild woman energy that challenged society's norms. And feminism is something that got women back in touch with our power. But of course, we don't stay in the anger and the blame of society. That's moving into the shadow. The erotic essence of the wild woman is she carries a raw instinct and an untamed sensuality. Now, when it comes to intimacy, we have been conditioned. We've been told that we need to be sexy in a certain way, or we can only express in a certain way, or what's attractive. The wild woman is raw. Okay, she's just herself. She's so in touch with her body and her emotions, and how she expresses herself is authentic and fearless. And she's not thinking about how the other person is receiving her. She's thinking more about her freedom and passion. And that is the eroticism of the wild woman. An ancient story is the story of Lilith, who was said to be Adam's first partner before Eve. And unlike Eve, Lilith refused to submit to Adam's authority. So when Adam demanded dominance, she chose exile rather than submission. So that was the point where she was like, no. So she left the garden and lived outside society. And over time, her story was demonized, but many modern interpretations view her differently. Lilith represents the woman who chose freedom over acceptance. So that is an ancient story. And I'm not going to create meaning around it. Get the meaning, whatever you need from it. The client story that I can tell you about when I worked with the wild woman with someone is one of my clients, she spent 10 years in a really prestigious corporate career and it was slowly draining her creativity. Now she had essentially gone into this career because she'd come from a very academic family and all of this, but really inside her, she had a completely different thing that she wanted to do. She wanted to be a sex therapist. This was completely against her family values and everything. And, all of the friends and everyone she had would never really understand why she would leave this prestigious career and do something out of the box. But it was really what she wanted to do. And she just felt like something was draining her, something was missing, something was weakening her life force. And we really had to work with her wild woman energy, recalibrate, reintegrate that. It was almost like a soul retrieval. And it was a soul retrieval actually, where and really understand that it was time to stop seeking approval and stop living a life that really wasn't true to her. And once we did this, she was able to go from corporate into being a sex therapist. And this is also, I really want to ask you, if is there something that you're just done with? Is there a part of life that you're absolutely done with and you don't want to continue anymore? You know, where in your life would you need the wild woman? The third one is the matriarch and the mother. Now, the matriarch, this is the mother. Okay, so she is all about devotion, care, legacy. She creates environments where people feel safe. She builds families, communities, and institutions. Now, very much with what I've built with Soul Goddess, I am, in many different energies. I'm in probably all of the energies. Um, Yeah, but when I teach and when I share and when I work with clients, I'm more in my mother energy, my matriarch energy. And I'm thinking about the community, the institution, what I'm giving back to life, the legacy, all of that. So the magnetic qualities are nurturing, protective, steady, loyal, devoted to growth and continuity. This is not about overly focusing on yourself and thinking about what you can give to others. Who is attracted to the mother matriarch archetype, right? So people who are family orientated. So when a man wants to build a family, he is going to be drawn to the mother archetype. He's not really going to be drawn to the princess archetype unless he recognizes the mother archetype within her. Other people, who are drawn to her are also people in vulnerable life stages and people with mother wounds, but you have to be careful with that because when a mother is truly in her energy, she's not going to be mothering a man because that's the wrong place for this. Do you see how there's always a powerful place for an archetype and a place that you just don't want to go to, right? Like the shadow. Communities seeking guidance or the next step are drawn to mother matriarch energy. And going back to a relationship, anybody who wants to build a family unit, a legacy, wants emotional security and stability will be drawn to her. And it will be a no-brainer. So who's not drawn to her? Right? People who don't want to build right now a legacy or a family, they're not going to be drawn to this archetype. They're going to be drawn to the princess or a different one or the wild woman or someone else that they can just, resolve something with, whatever, wherever they are in their season of life. People who resist emotional closeness won't be drawn to her because she is all about building something. People who just want to go on their own way and, are very highly independent and they just want to experience life, they're not going to be drawn to her. And people who are not ready to settle down are not going to be drawn to her. The shadow expression is like being a martyr, right? So giving over your power to look after others. That is not a powerful expression of the matriarch, the mother. The real matriarch mother power expression is to give to herself and then give to others. Because she's a living example, especially when you're raising children, you are an example. So the mother can also be a smother when she gives too much of herself and she doesn't allow people to be independent. So this can also be seen with clients when sometimes I see people working with clients and they are controlling too much of what they think a client should do. And this is smothering because you're not allowing that person to have their own identity and come to their own responsibility. You're here to guide as a matriarch. You're not here to control, right? And take over responsibility. That is not what we're here to do. We are here to model, guide, teach. The other thing is self-neglect and like there's women out there that absolutely live to be serve. But then you need to be like a nun or something like that. Because if you are living too much to serve, I don't believe that this is a balanced, healthy expression of the mother and matriarch. And I think we really need to, and I need to be really direct and challenge that, because there's people who end up being mothers and they feel guilty because they're not fitting into the self-neglect, over-responsible martyr, and they feel that they've done a bad job, right? And that's not true. This is a distortion. The core wound is if a mother matriarch archetype feels that her only quality that she can give to others is to take care of them, then it's a wound. That is not the truth. And sometimes her core wound is also she can remind people of their mother and she can mother people, and that does lose attraction because nobody wants to be, they're not going to be sexually attracted or romantically attracted to their mother. And even if it's beyond sexual and romantic attraction, it depends where you are activating this in your life. You want to activate this with your children and with animals and the earth and, teaching and community and giving back to the world. That's all. You don't want to activate this within your relationship with your partners, your clients, in the way you can teach from that place, but you have to stay in the powerful expression, not the shadow. So when is this archetype needed? So when you are leading a community, when you're creating a long-term legacy, when you're raising a family, this is the archetype to really invoke and step into. Now, is there an erotic essence of the matriarch mother, right? Because I just said don't use it in your relationships, but there is. Because if you are in that season of your life, you have warmth, you have devotion, you create emotional safety and grounding. Your sensuality is more nurturing than provocative. And people deeply feel held, supported, and deeply valued in your presence. And that is the erotic essence. And when I say erotic essence, I don't just mean sexually, I mean the raw attraction. So this is what the matriarch mother gives. If I could say an ancient story, I would say it's a story of the goddess of harvest, Demeter, who was devoted to her daughter Persephone. And when Persephone disappeared, Demeter searched the whole world for her. And in her grief, she withdrew fertility from the earth. And it was only when Persephone returned to the land, Demeter, the crops were able to grow. And if you know the story of Persephone, half the time she's under the earth and half the time she's over the earth. And Demeter represents the power of maternal devotion, but also what can happen when you put everything on not just your offspring, but because a matriarch mother is, you have offspring who are children or animals, and you also have your creations. You also have your duties. Even if you have no children at all, you have your duties. You have your dharma. And this is something that nothing should get in the way of, because this is a development of the soul. It's not something that's just something beyond this physical world. And I believe that it's a big reason of why you are here on earth. If I could tell you about a client, there was a client, she was completely loved being a mother, right? But her children grew up. And in that time, she had become so identified with being a mother that she had lost connection of who she was before and who she would be after. And when it was, the empty nest syndrome, she completely did not know who she was. And we had to learn with her to step out of the archetype. So it's not always about stepping in, because we had to rediscover her other qualities and purpose. And we actually initiated the wild woman back in, as she had rejected this archetype because she was so in the mother, like she could not be the wild woman. People in her world, because she wanted to be a very traditional, stay-at-home mom, and that's absolutely fine. But that was very much not the wild woman at all. But I've met many mothers who integrate being a mother and the wild woman. So it's not to say there's a different way to do everything. I'm sure the wild woman would be very fun to have as a mum sometimes, but also equally, being a very traditional mother. There's no judgment on my part. I've spoken to so many people. I've interviewed over probably like, I don't know, 300 people, maybe more than that. Um, yeah, way more than that. I think up to 1,000. Yeah. I have spoken to so many people with so many stories, and I think that's one of my gifts in this world. And it has really, really taught me that the judgment of the way people live their lives, there just isn't any anymore because it's such a wide spectrum. But also, I think that what is important to me is that people really live what is true to them at that time. And I say at that time because what is true to you changes. What is true to you changes over your life. And that is why we're also talking about this as a spectrum. Now we go on to the wise woman, who's also the crone. Now, there is a difference between the wise woman and the wild woman because on the surface they might seem the same, and they also might seem the same as the priestess as well, but they're all three of them are different. And at the end, I'm going to be telling you how they're different because I don't want to go too much in the differences now before you know about all of them. Now, the wise woman and the crone, so in certain Western ancient traditions, it's the mother, maiden, and crone. So this is the crone represents the final parts of life. But again, for me, it's about bringing this in at any point in your life. When I was a child, I think I was the crone. I came out knowing so much more than what I know now because I've been conditioned. People were just like, what is going on? I was the wise woman when I was like 3. Okay, so there's no place where this cannot be. So the wise woman represents clarity and truth. She has lived through cycles of loss, transformation, and renewal, and she sees life with depth and perspective. Her magnetic qualities are discernment, perspective, emotional intelligence, truth-telling, and calm authority. Now, she is someone that attracts people who want true guidance, who want wisdom and higher thinking and how to live. She is like the oracle, right? And people who's drawn to her, people who've gone through the fire, people who've gone through dark night of the soul, and they're seeking deeper understanding and they see beyond the matrix and they want something intangible. They want the real truth of life. It's like the wise sage. People, and just, you can think of someone who's really gone through the fire and they hold all these secrets and they're not loud about it. You can just see in their embodiment that they hold something. And people who want that are drawn to her. And this is everybody. This is the whole of society. And if we are thinking of romantic relationships, it will be a man who's also gone through that. And the interesting thing about the crone is someone who just wants higher knowledge is not going to be attracted to her. Someone who's gone through the process to attain the higher knowledge will be attracted to her. This is also with teachers. You will already be able to feel that someone has gone through the fire and they hold a lesson, a teaching. You feel that depth. The shadow expression of the wise woman is when she starts, she understands the higher perspective of life, but then it causes her to isolate. There's a cynicism, there's an emotional withdrawal. She starts looking at the world too negatively. And there was definitely a time that I was stuck in this shadow where I felt like there's just no point. It's almost like you've seen what the world for what it is, and now you're done with it. But that again is not the purpose of not the wild woman, the wise woman. It's not the purpose of the wise woman or the crone. The wise woman is here to come back and give her knowledge. Now, if we can say a subtle difference as how the wild woman is here to give her free and uninhibited expression, the wise woman is here to give that truth, that medicine. It's the medicine woman. Okay, she's here to give you the real depth of the human experience. Now, a core wound of someone who stayed in the wise woman for too long can be the belief that this wisdom is so vast and not everyone is going to understand it and it needs to be carried alone. And the world is never going to be ready to hear it. So she just is off in her cavern and she's doing her thing. And there are many people that live like this. And that's fine. But as long as you're doing it as a choice and not a belief that the world can't receive it, because if you have discovered it, then you will find people that can receive it. When is the wise woman needed? During endings. So, how the maiden and princess is needed during beginnings, the wise woman is needed during endings. So, when there's divorce, grief, major life transitions, when things don't in life don't go your way, like I said, a dark night of the soul, you need the wise woman because the wise woman is going to bring a deeper understanding and a spiritual and ancient intelligence of what is happening. This is not a archetype that you can have and have a really big ego at the same time. This is the archetype that steps in once your ego is a little bit stamped on by life, right? And if I can say a client story, it would be there was a lady I'd worked with, and she'd spent years navigating divorce, and she was ignoring her own wisdom, and she was chasing and proving, and deep down she knew all of these things about what was happening, and she just couldn't get over her divorce. And in working together, we activated the wise woman and her crone energy so she could complete the lesson, and she could receive the medicine and insight and the teaching of this time, and she could take her energy back and really understand why she had gone through this and what it means for her life. And in doing that, she was able to rebuild, she was able to grieve it, end it, and rebuild something new. And this is just like in Hinduism, we have creation and destruction cycles. This is a destructive energy. And in the sense, it's a destructive energy. Let me take that back. It's not a destructive energy, it's the energy that comes after destruction. What is the erotic essence? Does the wise woman, the crone, have an erotic essence? Of course she does. It's her depth, it's her emotional intelligence. It's that she just does not put her attention on superficial things. She has a deep sense of respect. When you come around her, you just can't help but respect her because there's a mysterious clarity and inner authority. And that is very magnetic. The ancient story in ancient Greece, the Oracle of Delphi, who was a woman who delivered prophetic messages. Kings and generals traveled across the whole world to seek her guidance. She spoke rarely, but her words shaped decisions of nations. Her power was not loud, it was clear. So if the Oracle of Delphi, she gave back. She was in her wise woman era, and maybe for the rest of her life she chose to stay there, but she still came out and she gave her guidance, and that's important. The priestess, we've got two more to go. We've got the priestess and we've got the queen. Okay, the priestess, this represents the connection to deeper meaning, unseen forces influencing our life, and her presence creates depth and introspection. Now, again, this is different from the wise woman. I think you can see the difference between the priestess and the wild woman, right? But the wise woman and the priestess, there's a subtle difference. The priestess is somebody who is completely in touch with mystery, presence, insight, emotional depth, intuition. She's just working in the unseen realms. Now, this is someone who is like working on their transformation, the inner work, the emotional intimacy, the exploration of the unseen realms. She's working with unseen forces. This is when you're really an apprentice of like spiritual practices, or even just if you like, just you're an apprentice of whatever. You're learning, you're developing, you're perfecting your craft. And the people who are drawn to this is people who want that. Again, the crone is very much, she's gone through the journey and she's at the end. The priestess is in the journey of the transformation. And people who are also going through that transformation, they will be so drawn to the priestess. Who are already an apprentice of something will be drawn to her. People who want to be in touch with the unseen realm and the unseen forces, the mysteries of life, will be drawn to her. Her shadow expression is when, again, if she withdraws from the world too much, when she avoids practical life, she's so in her craft that she's avoiding practical life. No matter what, we cannot avoid practical life. We have to be able to survive in this world. And also, a shadow expression is when she has spiritual superiority, or she feels, okay, I know this now and I'm above you. Like, you're not awakened, or you're not, because that can't be there. The that doesn't exist in the shadow expression of the wise woman, because she's gone through the fire and she's had her ego broken. But the priestess is practicing and perfecting her craft. So she could easily fall into, okay, I know this now and you don't, so we don't want that. Her core wound can be shame and worthlessness. Now, when someone gets initiated in some way, they have to go through a separation from the life that they knew before. Sometimes this life involves family, partners, friendships. And in that, she could develop a core wound, feeling that her gifts are too much and not welcome. And she might not know how to integrate them in everyday life. Now, when I went through so many initiations I've gone through in my life. But when I did some mediumship training, which was something that I just did not set out to do at all. Like, a mentor found me, I entered a program, I did it for 2 years. It's something that I've always had, but I'm not a medium. I don't broadcast in the way, it's just a skill that I've developed. But in doing that, I just did not know how people were going to receive it, because previously I was able to see the unseen world, but I couldn't manage it. And I didn't know how to integrate this into my life. And I nearly fell into that core wound, but because I had a really great teacher, I didn't. And because I was working with a group, I didn't. So it's so important that when you are in a phase of apprenticeship, phase of the priestess, that you have a really strong teacher. Even in India, when you trained in Kundalini from a very young age, you have to be very close contact with your teacher. You don't just embark on things by yourself, because you can easily fall into core wounds, or you can also so many things can happen, let's be honest. So when is this archetype needed? So when you are is when you get initiated, right? So when you are developing your spiritual gifts, working with the universe, drawn to mystery, ancient teachings, when you're awakening deeper parts of you, this is when the priestess is needed. And her erotic essence is mystery, sacred sensuality, even tantra, depth, presence, emotional intimacy. She has something intangible that not everyone possesses. So her energy is quiet but powerful. She invites others into a deeper experience of connection. This is when she really takes you somewhere else. It's like, if you were to be sexually intimate with a woman like this, she's just going to take you somewhere else. And it's not just about sexual intimacy. If you are around the priestess, you just feel in touch with the mysteries of life. She's like the magician, and that can be wildly addictive. So the ancient story is the priestesses of Avalon. In Celtic tradition, priestesses lived in sacred communities devoted to spiritual practice and guidance. They served as healers, advisors, and keepers of knowledge, and their role was to maintain connection between the visible and invisible worlds. I worked with a client who had really good intuitive abilities, but she spent years hiding them because she feared being judged. And when she embraced them openly, she started developing and training, and it became central to her work. She was able to heal lifetimes worth of the witch wound, and was able to connect to a part of her that felt missing for years. So this was about reclaiming the priestess within her. Now we are on to the final archetype, the queen. So the queen represents sovereignty, leadership. She knows her worth. She moves with quiet authority. Her qualities are magnetic qualities are she's confident, she's got standards, she has vision, she has leadership, composure. When you're around her, you feel this royal air. It's not about anything she says or does. She can just be really quiet, but you feel that royalty, that royal essence. And she always attracts people and partners who respect strength and competence. So remember I said in when we were talking about the maiden, when a man truly wants to create a massive vision in his life, he will be wildly attracted to the queen. You know, if he wants a power couple vibe, he will be attracted to her. If someone wants a business partner who, you know, they both can join forces and create something amazing, even like two women, they will be attracted to the queen. When someone what is too much in people pleasing and they can't really stand in their power, they will be attracted to the queen as a teacher. Friends who are in their queen energy will be attracted to the queen as long as they don't fall into the shadow. So, you know, anyone who values women with high standards, anyone who wants to treat a woman well, respect, revere, honor her, will be attracted to the queen. What is the shadow expression? When she's in the ice queen stage, right? When she is controlling because she wants power, she wants everything to go her way. She can maybe become arrogant because she just has no time for people who don't understand her. She can be emotionally distant, she can be entitled. Now, the core wound behind all this is humiliation. So she secretly fears of being diminished. You know, sometimes I also see with people who are very much in the queen energy is they don't want to appear human. They want to appear like they're just so perfect and above it all that it causes more harm because they're not able to truly integrate all parts of themselves. Now, the true queen she's very royal and confident and she has high standards but when she has her leadership, she's very much from the heart as well. She's not, people have this depiction that a queen is always an ice queen, but that's when she's in the shadow. When is this archetype needed? So when you're leading an organization or a family or a movement or a business or a mission or a movement, the queen has to come in because the queen, to do all these things, you need respect, you need an influential and royal aura. You need that to maintain and establish influence and legacy. Without this energy, you're not going to be able to do it. Now, the erotic essence is people are very attracted to her sovereignty and standards, like how much she truly respects herself, how much confidence and self-possession she has, how much power she has, but with her composure. That is very wildly attractive. If we think about Cleopatra, who was, like a complete goddess, who ruled Egypt during a time of political upheaval. She was highly educated, multilingual, and strategically brilliant. She used diplomacy, intelligence, and presence to maintain power, and her influence shaped the politics of an empire. She was in her queen energy. Now, I had a client who constantly downplayed her achievements in her career, in relationships. She was always attracting people that take more from her. And I asked, when we started working together, it was because she had been brought up to be like this, to be people pleasing. This is how she was accepted into certain tribes in her life, such as her family and her social circle. And she was really, getting stepped on. She didn't have standards in love or the bedroom or the leadership or anything. And we really needed to invoke the queen in her. We needed to understand that her mother, who was very much the queen and shadow queen, ice queen, had pushed her into the role of shadow princess maiden. Stay down there, you answer to me. And then she had just continuously recreated these patterns throughout her life. So she had a lot of unresolved stuff within her own femininity towards the queen because she had unresolved stuff towards her mother. And she wasn't stepping into her, true essence and her influence, and her true worth. And it's when we resolved all of these things that there was nothing to be done. It just naturally happened. And she was able to improve drastically the standards. She applied for a leadership position. She started attracting better men. She started having better sex because she was asking for what she wanted. And that was a really big thing. And it wasn't that we were working around how to communicate and all the manipulation tactics around the throat chakra of what to say and how to say it. It was the energy behind where it was coming from, the true self-belief and the energetic piece of understanding that you are worth asking for what you want. It's possible. Many women throughout history have been asking for what they want. It's not even a new thing. We have gone through the maiden, the wild woman, the mother, the wise woman, the priestess, and the queen. Many women unconsciously live inside a single archetype for years. It could be the maiden who's never grown into leadership, the wild woman who rejects stability, the mother who forgets herself, the wise woman who's always isolated, the priestess who withdraws from the world, or the queen who becomes hardened into ice. Now, true feminine power, as I mentioned, is the ability to move between the archetypes depending on life demands and the season of life that you're in. The quickest thing that I can give to you is how to activate the archetype you need based on, we've gone through what different seasons of life and when you need them. But if you want to attract, like, if I could give you the quickest version to attract each archetype, you want to attract the maiden. Play, curiosity, and creativity is what you need to bring into your world. Start exploring, playing, being creative, being curious. Naturally, you will invoke the maiden. If you want the wild woman, see in your life what you're not going to do anymore, right? Get in touch with your truth. Be courageous to go against the grain. And have some rebellion against anything that keeps you small, any limitations, and you will invoke the wild woman. These are ancient archetypes. If you want to invoke the matriarch and the mother, start devoting yourself, start protecting something, start nurturing, start leading. The wise woman, start truly reflecting on your life and why you've gone through certain things. Start getting a wider, more mature perspective of things, a deeper truth. So this truth is a deeper truth, whereas the wild woman is more of an active truth, whereas like, I'm not going to do this anymore. If you want to get in touch with the priestess, look for your inner connection, start connecting with the universe, learn about the mysteries of life, learn about the meaning behind things, learn about spiritual depth, start being an apprentice to something in your life. Devote yourself to a practice, an art, a craft. You will invoke the priestess, especially if that craft is creative or entrepreneurial, or spiritual, you're still activating the priestess because entrepreneurial, creative, and spiritual things all work with mysteries of the unseen. If you want to attract the queen, start raising your standards in certain areas of your life. Step into your authority. It's not always about communication. It's about stepping into your authority just for you. Maybe change the way you dress. Maybe start dressing like more of a powerhouse, right? Step into your leadership. And the more fluidly a woman really gets in touch with these archetypes and she's able to move through the spectrum, the more magnetic she becomes. Okay. Now, just a note on the wild woman, the priestess, and the crone. A simple way to differentiate them is the wild woman is all about instinct and freedom. The priestess is about intuition and sacred awareness. And the crone is about wisdom and perspective. So the wild woman breaks rules, the priestess works deeply with energy, and the wise woman understands the bigger picture. So the wild woman changes the world through action, authenticity, and truth. The priestess changes the world through presence, inner practice, and perception. The wise woman changes the world through clarity, acceptance, and understanding. Wow. Well, before we finish, I want to leave you with one question to reflect on. And I know we had a few questions in the beginning. Which archetype has been shaping your life the most, and which one have you been holding back? Write to me if you want, comment below, whatever you feel. And I want to say that very often the archetype we suppress is the one that holds the key to the next chapter of our life. And understanding this is really powerful. But real change only happens when you begin working through the deeper patterns that keep certain parts of you hidden and others overdeveloped. So this is the work I do privately with women. If you would like to explore working with me, you are welcome to book a call through the link below, and we will have a conversation about what patterns are shaping your relationships and your life, and we will look at if working together would be the right next step for you and me. And I would say that this is a call for people who are truly ready to step into the next part of their evolution. Thank you for joining me on this masterclass. So much love.